What's up, everybody? It's your boy Charles Wells, aka the host of SWACtalk, the show where we cover the SWAC inside and out. And I'm gonna come at you today with a little bit of a Magic City Classic preview, and also little talk about the transfer portal and what's going on with that. So, before we get started, as usual, man, if you haven't already, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the page, like all the videos, and share the videos, man, and spread the word out to everybody who you know who likes football, HBCU football, SWAC football, played by any of the 10 teams. Well, soon to be 12 teams in the SWAC. And hit that notification bell so you can be alerted anytime I drop content. I'm going to be doing content at least 3 times a week. So you don't want to miss out on none of it, man, because it's all good, at least as far as I'm concerned. And it's all pretty thorough and pretty solid SWAC information. So go ahead and do that. While you're doing all that work, why don't you go ahead and check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/SWACtalk, instagram.com/SWACtalk. Check out the podcast SWACtalk, which is where all of this originated at. That can be found on anchor.fm/SWACtalk, or you can check Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all them joints. Just search for SWACtalk and go ahead and check that out, man, and give me a listen. The show is uploaded on Wednesdays and Sundays. Wednesdays, I usually do a preview of that week's games, and then Sunday, I recap that action. So, and with the spring season almost wrapping up, this will be on and popping in the fall. And just so you know, when I get ready for fall time, I do an individual team preview every day of my upload schedule. So twice a week, you'll be getting an individual team preview with my thoughts on how that upcoming season is going to go and how the previous season went. Who's gone, who's coming back, who's new, who's old, all that. And we talk about all that pretty thorough. So these YouTube videos, just so you know, are kind of like a little more condensed version of what my show is. My show is more statistically based, if that's your thing. If not, then the videos will be more for you because they're more hard, quick hitting. So let's go ahead and not waste no more time, because I know y'all waiting for me to stop talking about this kind of stuff and go ahead and talk about what I want to talk about. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Magic City Classic, Alabama State and Alabama A&M. Hooking up on Saturday, April 17th, 6:30 p.m. kickoff, ESPNU broadcast. Game is pretty much for all the marbles. Alabama A&M wins, they pretty much win the division because everybody behind them will have at least 2 losses. If Alabama State wins, then they'll probably finish in a tie for first place with Alabama A&M, and they'll get the head-to-head. Alabama A&M does play Valley on 24th, but no offense to Valley, but Valley is Valley. So if they win, then they pretty much are gonna wrap up the division. So this is winner take all pretty much, and this is what you want in a rivalry game coming down to the next to last week. Although when the season was scheduled, this was the last week, but because of COVID postponements and weather postponements, games have been pushed back to the 24th. So now it's the second to last week. But this is what you want in a rivalry matchup. Winner take all. You want to ruin that other team's season. They want to ruin yours. Everybody going to go out there and go hard. In this matchup, the coaches, they are best friends, really good friends, and they talk trash to each other. They've been going hard at each other since Monday, so they want to get the leg up. The fan bases talk back and forth, So it's a rivalry that spanned many decades. And if you want to hear a little bit more of my thoughts on the rivalry itself, if you haven't already listened to it, I have a video that was uploaded earlier in the week about SWAC rivalry, so you can check that out. But this game is gonna be a very good game. I think it's kind of like a tale of 2 different styles. If you watched A&M on Saturday against Jackson State, you know they like to throw the ball all around the field. Akil Glass and all his receivers, Brian Moore, Brian Jenkins Jr., Ibrahim, Odu Hilaire, Cameron Young, Kendrick Johnson, the tight end, Garrett Quarles, the running back. They're loaded with guys, you know what I'm saying? They can throw the ball to anybody, and anybody on that team can take it the distance when they get the ball in their hands. Glass, 6'5". I've been hearing a lot of people talk more and more about his pro prospects. He's a cerebral guy. He can make all the reads. If you give him time, he's gonna pick you apart. He does have the tendency to make some mistakes in some games, but in big games, he don't really throw a lot of interceptions. If you look at how he played against Alcorn and Southern last year, hardly no turnovers. Jackson State this game, no turnovers. Those 3 interceptions against South Carolina State, you can kind of probably chalk up to trying to make some things happen in the first game of the year after being off for almost a year and a half. But he's not a runner, but he's deceptively athletic. You know, that white guy term. But he's the type of quarterback that he wants to stay in the pocket. So if you can get him out of the pocket, then it's more to your advantage because he's not as comfortable if he has to make some plays on the fly. Now, if you let him sit back in that pocket, he's gonna find those receivers, and they all bring something different to the table. You have Brian Jenkins Jr., who's a speedster slot type guy, very, very, very confident, and he can make plays. You have Ibrahim, a little bit of a bigger guy who can be the big target down the field. Came from out of nowhere and was a freshman All-American. You have Moore, who's kind of a compliment to Ibrahim. He can go deep or he can play short. And then you have Odu Hilaire, a guy who is coming on strong, and a tight end that can make plays. So they have different places that can attack different levels. And if you watch the Jackson State game, then you know that they really did a good job of isolating their slots against linebackers and safeties. And they won those matchups almost every time because they just couldn't cover them because it wasn't getting any pressure. Now, one thing Alabama State does well as a team is their front seven is very solid. Their defensive line led by Christian Clark, who is like an absolute fire plug in the middle, man. He's like a big stumpy guy that you can't move. So he's going to allow for those ends and linebackers to make some plays because he's going to clog up the middle. But the problem with Alabama State in this matchup is that's good against a run type team because they, you know, you can allow your linebackers to get free, but if they can use that to get pressure on glass with just the front, then they'll be okay. If they have to start committing guys to blitz, then you leaving one-on-one matchups on the outside, and I don't think the secondary is strong enough to win those matchups the majority of the time. So they want to try to get to the quarterback and throw him off his rhythm to take the pressure off of their secondary because A&M is not going to run the ball that much. They don't have that go-to guy like they did in Jordan Bentley the last 3.5-4 years. Garrett Quarles is a nice back. He's a smaller guy that can get behind his blockers and sometimes get lost. But they don't really want to sit there and run the ball, 30 times. So they're going to run him a few times on draws and little stretch plays, things to get him outside in space. But A&M is going to have to try to find some kind of way to get. State is going to have to find some kind of way to get Alabama A&M behind the chains, so they can at least try to commit some pressure to get to glass. Because if they don't, then he's really confident this year, and he's feeling like he can make all the throws. So if they have to turn this into a shootout and play bend but don't break defense, then that's what they're going to have to do. Now on the other side of the ball, Alabama State's a team who is still, they're kind of like still finding themselves because Ryan Nettles is a redshirt freshman quarterback. This season is his first season playing in like 3 years. Tore his ACL in high school, so he didn't play a senior year, COVID year, all of that. And so he's steady. He's coming along strong. He's making plays, but then at the same time he still makes some mistakes. He can hold the ball too long. Sometimes he might lock on to the receiver. But they have some threats now. That Jeremiah Hickson, obviously Michael Jefferson's a guy who's the big play guy for them. And Ezra Gray is a running back who just like people that didn't know him already saw him burst on the scene against Jackson State, but he was a guy who had some pretty solid numbers the year before. He didn't really run the ball a lot because Alabama State's offense was kind of inept in 2019. They were having a lot of quarterback issues, and they just never have an identity. But between Gray and Ja'Cory Merritt, they have two backs that they can count on to carry the ball. Now they have to commit to running the ball because against South Carolina State, Ezra Gray didn't put up any numbers really. Against Valley, he didn't put up any real numbers. He had about 75 yards against Southern, but that 195 against Jackson is what stands out to people. So that's the Ezra Gray that they need. He's also a return man, so if he can make some plays in the return game, to give Alabama State some short fields, that can help too. But Alabama A&M on defense is definitely the definition of bend but don't break. They don't really get a lot of stops. Their secondary is young. They have some freshmen playing at corner, and they kind of got exploited last week in the run game and the pass game. In the run game, they took some bad angles and were out of position, which led to some big runs by the Jackson State running back. And in the pass game, they kind of got picked on a little bit because they didn't really they weren't as aggressive as they needed to be, or sometimes they were too aggressive because Alabama A&M felt like they needed to send more people to blitz. And since their defensive line is okay, but they're not great, they needed linebackers to get in there, and so that kind of left guys isolated. Now, I said it before in my preview last week, but Armani Holloway is a name that you always need to keep an eye out for because he's going to be around the football all the time. He's one of their top tacklers and a hell of a player. He's been a consistent player for them for the last couple of years, so I always keep an eye out on him. Marcus Cushines, the defensive end, he can make a lot of plays. Eli Jackson, also on the defensive line, he's disruptive. The key for them is their secondary. So if they can slow down their run game and force Alabama State to pass, then their secondary may be more comfortable with being able to dictate the pace of the game. Now, when these two teams played in 2019, it was a very high-scoring game. Both teams crossed 40 points, and I think it was like a double or triple overtime game. So I don't know if it's going to go that far, but I do think that both teams are going to cross 40 again because I just think that this is a high-energy game. It's a high-stakes game, and neither team has like an amazing defense. So both teams, if they get hot on offense, they can dictate the pace of this game. And Alabama State with Ryan Nettles is more explosive than they have been in the last couple of years because he can run himself and he can throw the ball down the field, and they do have some guys who can go down and get it, but they're going to have consistency on offense. And I mean, personally, I feel like they should probably try to run more to keep Alabama A&M off the field, but if that's not working, then they're going to have to do some more explosive type plays to get their points because I think A&M is going to score. So my prediction is that both teams are going to score a lot of points, but A&M is going to win. But but in my heart of hearts, I feel like this may not be that close of a game because I think Alabama A&M's offense is a lot better than Alabama State's offense, especially consistency-wise. So if State gets into too many situations where they have to punt, or they don't flip the field too much, then they're gonna find themselves in a battle from behind, and they don't want to do that. So it's gonna be important for Alabama State to get a quick start and to dictate the pace of the game because A&M is gonna get their points. That's just the way it goes. I've seen the team play up close in 2019, and it was the same way. They were down to Southern 14-7 at the half, I think it was, and the game ended up being 35-31 or something like that. So they're gonna score if they get started. So if you let them start to dictate what's going on, then you're gonna be in for a long night. So I think Alabama A&M is gonna win this game. I'm hoping that it's a good game because it's the Magic City Classic and strange things do happen. So I would not be surprised if Alabama State did win this game, but I'm going with the Bulldogs in this one. Now, just a quick tidbit before we get out of here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because A, I don't really like speculating on this kind of stuff, and B, it's not really much of a story right now, at least enough to spend a long time talking about it. But Jalon Jones from Jackson State has entered the transfer portal, and that's, I guess you could say that's news. I mean, it may not be if you of the mind like I was that at some point he probably was going to be leaving. I figured it would be like an off season or sometime during fall camp because everybody knows is that Shedeur Sanders is coming in, most likely going to be the quarterback. So I guess Jalon Jones, with him being benched last week and seeing the writing on the wall, he was like he's not even going to go through nothing else. I don't know if there's anything, any kind of thing going on behind the scenes, or if it's just like he's just like, man, I see the writing on the wall. I'm gonna go ahead and try to make a move now to give myself opportunity to get somewhere, so I can get in a program and get some workouts and get with a team by fall camp. So On that hand, it's a good move for him. Um, it next leaves the question on what's gonna happen with Quincy Casey. Is he gonna stick it out? Because if he don't, then quarterback depth is gonna really be an issue. So this is one of those things that you kind of have to be careful with when you manage a situation, because with the transfer portal now, even though it's like jam packed with guys, you may have depth at a position today, but tomorrow you don't. So you almost have to kind of massage these egos, And I think that through no real fault of his own, I think that Coach Sanders kind of put himself in behind the eight ball a little bit by letting things get out that Shador is getting reps with the first team in practice. And people like to spread narratives and things. And I know as a coach, you really can't kill a lot of that stuff, because you got people like me and other people talk about this stuff, and you see this and go with it. So you have to be careful, because now if you lose, and this is purely speculation, I'm not saying that he's leaving or nothing, and Jalon Jones could obviously come back, because just putting your name in a portal doesn't mean you're gone. Now, with some programs, if you put your name in the portal, then they don't want you no more because they feel like you're not committed to them. But the option of coming back is always there. So the thing to be careful with is, if you lose Quincy Casey, now you have no experienced quarterbacks at all, with a freshman quarterback coming in, and you just never know what's going to happen in football. You don't. Sometimes they say if you got two quarterbacks, you got none. But if you got one quarterback, you just never know. You still need that guy in the wings that you can trust. So going into a season with no experienced quarterbacks could be a big issue. So I think that's something that they're gonna have to try to manage, and try to keep under control, so they don't have a mass exodus. Because one thing I do want to say is, to anybody who thinks that these guys transfer out, that opens up a scholarship for somebody else. It doesn't really work that way. So just because a gang of guys are leaving don't mean that a gang of guys can come in immediately and replace, because you can only bring in like 25 a year. So your numbers are always going to be like playing catch up. So that's something that you have to be careful with as well. So that's, we're going to keep our eyes on those kind of situations. Obviously, like Jeremy Hickbottom from Grambling entered the portal earlier in the year. So, he's out there. So that's two starting quarterbacks at some point during the season for SWAC schools that have entered the portal. And I'm sure you'll see a few other guys go in, once the season starts to wrap up, because as much as this spring season was for a conference championship, which, can be looked at however you want to, you put asterisk by it, you can say it's not real football, whatever. It's an extended spring training, and it's also obviously an extensive way to get film out there on you for somebody else, because everybody's auditioning at some point, and with the transfer portal, your opportunity to leave and go somewhere else is always there. And now they have this the one-time transfer rule that you can go anywhere you want for one-time transfer, no matter where, without having to sit out. So expect to see more guys leave once the season is over. Expect to see obviously more guys come in. So it's gonna be the key is gonna be how you balance bringing in your transfers versus your guys who are already there, because you don't want to lean too heavy in one direction and isolate the guys who've already been with your program, because guys transfer for a reason. So you don't always know what that reason is. Sometimes you find out too late. But, that's something that is always an interesting topic. And we're going to keep our eyes on that. So that's going to do it for the show today. I appreciate everybody hanging out with me while I go over this little stuff. We're going to drop another video tomorrow. I'm trying to decide what game I'm going to preview. I need to get some confirmation on games that are actually going to still take place before I do this. But we're gonna be back on tomorrow with another game preview. Sunday, SWACtalk podcast is gonna be uploaded to recap all the week's action, and also Sunday we'll upload a video to recap the Magic City Classic. So we'll see you guys on tomorrow and Sunday, man. We got a lot of heat coming through. I'd like to thank y'all for watching and enjoying. Don't forget to subscribe and like and share everything that comes out, because, man, I like doing this for y'all, so I want to keep doing this. So I appreciate all the love, and we'll see y'all later. We out.